On the dairy side, I think there's a lot more focus in vitamin D supplementation as compared with beef, because at the onset of lactation, there's a huge draw of calcium into the milk. And so that is where vitamin D comes into the calcium and phosphorus metabolism pathway and can contribute to enhancing the status in the animal so that they're prepared when you feed high D prior to calving, that it basically preps the system to be ready to have that huge draw for calcium at the onset of lactation, which can result in hypocalcemia or cows that potentially go down because their balance is off, right? So high D is an option to enhance those levels and potentially mitigate the severity of some of those outcomes. In addition to that, the benefit in calcium and phosphorus metabolism, there also is benefits in milk yield that we see increased, enhanced milk yield following high D supplementation on the dairy side. A lot of the data so far is focused on that pre-fresh period and the benefits to the calcium status, that aspect, and the metabolic diseases associated with that there around calving. But there's data showing that feeding high D during lactation can also support increased milk yield. There's some really cool data on the udder health and mastitis side, looking at the benefits that high D plays in immune function and reducing some of those health outcomes like mastitis specifically, which is really critical in the dairy industry. And then of course, dairy cows stay in the herd for a long period of time, ideally. And so supporting the bone structure and bone strength can help keep that animal in the herd longer and support longevity as well. So there's a lot of different benefits that can come from feeding 25-hydroxy-vitamin D3 like high D. One easy way that you can boost the serum levels and elevate those vitamin D levels is through feeding a product like high D, which is the source of the 25-hydroxy-vitamin D3. And that basically bypasses the liver. So when you feed traditional vitamin D3 as cholecalciferol, it first has to be absorbed in the gastrointestinal tract, but then it has to go to the liver to be hydroxylated. That's step one. That becomes the circulating form, the 25-hydroxy-vitamin D3, which can be instead fed directly and go into the system through supplementing with high D type product. To get to the active form, whether it comes through the liver or in the diet via high D supplementation, it still has to go to the kidneys to become activated through another hydroxylation step. So that's very tightly regulated by the animal system and is controlled very tightly. So even when you're feeding high D, it's a very safe way to supply that vitamin D metabolite, boosts vitamin D levels, but you still have the safety factor that it still has to go through the kidneys to become the active form. So supplementing high D is a great way to elevate the serum 25-hydroxy-vitamin D3 and boost overall vitamin D status. There's definitely seasonal variation in vitamin D levels in the animals. Obviously, it is the sunshine vitamin, so you think if they're out on pasture, they don't need supplemental vitamin D potentially because it's being synthesized and produced within the animal because of that exposure to sunshine. But a lot of the data shows that even though that does happen and there is a benefit to that, it's not necessarily achieving the optimal levels of vitamin D to support, those growth and immune benefits that we were talking about. So providing it in the diet is an additional way to boost those levels and see those benefits. Beef cattle especially that are out on pasture, they have the exposure to sunshine, so you just assume that they get enough adequate vitamin D levels through that mode of action, but the data really suggests despite that you can achieve more optimum levels and enhance the health and performance by supplementing vitamin D, including in the form of high D as the 25-hydroxy-vitamin D3. But yeah, definitely, since a lot of the other species, even on the dairy side, a lot of the animals are confined and don't have that same access to the sunshine that you see with beef cattle. There is probably that perception